Make advertorials so good that your wife gives you this look. Again, because you're at 100K days back to back. Presented by the marketing genius who sold over $100 million through advertorial funnels in every niche imaginable. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's get straight into this masterclass on how you can build advertorials and do the same thing. So right now there's a brand with a worse product than yours that is doing 100K days. Their ads are not better than yours, their product is not better, and their team is not bigger. The difference is this one page. A page that takes a complete stranger, someone who didn't even know that your brand existed 60 seconds ago, and walks them from, I don't even know that I have a problem, to take my money in a single scroll, right? And this page is called an advertorial. It's the most profitable asset in direct response marketing right now. And it is how brands convert cold traffic at 3 to 4% while everyone else celebrates 1 to 2%. It is how they outbid you on the same traffic and stay profitable doing it. And it is also why their return on ad spend holds stable at 50,000 per day while yours breaks at 5K per day. Most founders never build an advertorial because nobody ever showed them how. So they just keep testing new creatives, pointing them at the same product page and wonder why every scaling attempt dies at the same glass ceiling. And you are about to see the whole machine. So we took one of the best converting advertorials running right now on the market, a page that's printing money on cold traffic as you read this, and pulled it apart line by line, section by section, with the psychology behind every sentence exposed. The page we are dissecting sells a shoulder massager called Rejuva. They're doing hundreds of millions per year, and we're going to break down the whole advertorial right now. But before we do that, I quickly want to talk about the two main psychology concepts behind every winning advertorial. So concept number one is selling is creating separation. Basically, advertorials and copywriting are just salesmanship in print, right? And selling is creating separation between where somebody is now and where they want to be, right? So if you are selling whatever you're selling to a certain prospect, you want to create a separation in their mind between where they are and where they want to be. And then when you want to position your product as the vehicle that gets them from where they are to where they want to be, right? So before you even start writing a single line of the advertorial, you need to be crystal clear on these two things. Where's the customer right now with their current pain points, their daily frustrations, or what they currently believe about their problem, and where does the customer want to be, right? What are their goals and what are the specific moments that they want back? And the entire advertorial is basically just bridging that gap over and over again in different scenes and different words. That's concept number one for winning advertorials. Concept number two for winning advertorials is something that I like to call the pain threshold. So pain is the strongest motivator humans have, right? So every person is motivated away from pain towards pleasure. But this motivation to get away from pain is 10 times stronger than being motivated towards something, right? Towards pleasure. But pain only produces action when it becomes more painful than the action itself, right? And that's what I like to call the pain threshold. So that's what you can see here. People have what I like to call a pain threshold, meaning that if you just experience a tiny bit of pain, you're not going to change, you're not going to take action, right? And that's different for every person. But let's just say there's a certain line that you have to cross in terms of the pain that they have to feel so that they take an action. So let's just say that over time, you hit a certain pain, right? So like this, but you're still underneath the threshold and they're just not going to take action, meaning they're not going to buy your product. On the other hand side, if you are able to cross the pain threshold and build so much pain in your prospect that they're going to take action, they're going to purchase your product. So just think about how many people are so overweight and they will still not start a diet, right? They feel pain every single day, but they've just not accumulated enough pain and they haven't crossed the pain threshold yet to start taking action, right? And your reader, your prospects are in the same position. So what I want you to do is I want you to take the biggest pains, right? Find out the 3 to 5 biggest pain points and the 3 to 5 biggest desires your customer has. And then what you want to do is you want to hit these the whole time doing the advertorial in different ways, right? Do not be scared of repetition here. Repetition is the mechanism because every additional hit moves the reader closer to the pain threshold and closer to taking action. So these two are super, super important before even writing the advertorial. Then, obviously also important, how do we set the stage, right? We set the stage with the correct ad. because the advertorial can only continue a certain story. It cannot start a story. So the ad that you show on the ad platform, this is what starts the story, right? And this is why I also want to spend some time talking about this first, because a perfect advertorial behind the wrong ad converts really bad. So the ad basically has two jobs. First, it wants to get the click. And second, it needs to set the frame for the page, right? So the angle, the pain, and the level of curiosity. Now, if we look at the reader's head, right? Like what's going through their mind when they see the ad? They are potentially on the couch, they are at the bus station, they are in their 9 to 5, whatever. And they are never really shopping, right? They've scrolled past thousands of ads that look like ads, right? So whenever we see an ad, and you can see this with yourself too on Instagram, you just skip it on reflex. So what we want to do is we want to give them something that doesn't look like an ad. And I will show you some examples in just a second, right? So just stick with me. The way we do this is we want to open something that looks like a person sharing a discovery and not like you running an ad, right? So just a good example for this product that we're breaking down again, which is this pain relief product, the shoulder massager. An ad could be something like, I canceled my shoulder surgery 3 weeks before the date and my shoulder has never felt better. My physical therapist told me something off the record about why shoulders over 50 never heal. And nobody in the medical system is talking about it, right? So this could be an amazing copy for an ad, right, with a quick image, and then you can get people clicking on this. We don't talk about the product or any of that, right? We just have a completely different entry into the story in the prospect's mind. So what this basically does, it breaks the pattern, right? Because canceling a surgery and getting better contradicts everything the viewer expects, right? Everybody thinks, okay, if I'm 50 years old, if I have a bad shoulder, then I need surgery, right? So why could anything else help me now? And also it opens a loop, right? Because we say the physical therapist told me something off the record. So the prospects directly go, okay, what did the therapist say? And why is it off the record? And then the last thing it does, it basically qualifies the audience. So we say, why shoulders over 50? So we qualify the audience in one line, shoulders over 50. So we basically attract people of who the advertorial is then written for. The ad teases the mechanism without reserving it, right? So turns out my shoulder was never damaged, it was starving. And once I understood what that means, everything changed. So the viewer arrives in the advertorial mid-story, right? So that's basically the congruence you want to achieve. And I just want to show you the ads now, just so you can see it yourself, right? So these are different ads that are all pointing towards advertorials. And what you can see is that none of these really do look like an ad, right? So we start with a story, or we start with a certain pain point, or with copy like this, right? So in terms of the copy, it should just really break the pattern. It should talk about some form of pain point, and it should already set the stage for a new solution or new mechanism. And then also in terms of the images, these images tend to work extremely well, right? So you can see the first one is some form of a comic. The other one looks like something taken out of a biology book where it breaks down a cell. And then the last one is looking like it's taken out of a medicine book, right? So these ones work extremely well just because we don't show the product, we don't even talk about the product, we just talk about the problem. And then they feel that when they click on the ad that they're then going to get the solution, right? And that's where we then go into the advertorial. So let's start breaking down the advertorial section by section. So I figured first of all, I would just scroll through the whole advertorial just so you can see high level what it looks like, right? So basically just a lot of copy with some images in between, and we're just going to break this down section by section, right? So just wanted to give you an overview of the advertorial high level. And then next step, I'm just going to break this down section by section, right? So section number 1, the hook. So basically, for this section, you want to picture where the reader is in their mind when the page loads, right? So they just clicked the ad 3 seconds ago, the guard is up obviously, and they're already thinking about leaving the page again. So what we want to do with the hook is we want to set the stage and we want to buy the next 30 seconds of attention. If this fails, nothing else on the page matters, right? So this is the single most important section, and also the one that we like to iterate and A/B test on the hardest. So to convince the reader that this is valuable, the hook needs to win 2 battles at the same time. So number 1, we don't want to make this look like an ad. So you want it to look like an article. That's number one. And then number two is that they already have certain beliefs about their problem, right? So the headline typically attacks the belief that they currently have and set the stage for a unique mechanism, right? And then the page afterwards basically drops into a relatable personal story. So what you can see that the hook is basically the real reason your shoulder won't heal. Hint, it's not the wear and tear, and the 12-minute fix that's making cortisone shots obsolete. We then have written by Dr. Schilling. We then have this image of this nice looking lady with the product, and then we have some trust badges. So basically, and again, just showing you the live page, basically this looks like some form of article. And that's what we want to achieve. Now, this is what gets them into the article, right? And then this is very interesting because here we then get started with the story. I couldn't hook my own bra. I stood in my closet. Same closet I stood in 10,000 mornings before. Arms twisted behind my back, fingers shaking, tears running down my face, trying to do something every woman does without thinking and failing. At that moment, I wasn't Linda anymore. I wasn't a wife, a mother, grandmother. I was just a body that had betrayed me. So basically what we do here is we start the story with a tiny humiliating moment, right? Which is basically she cannot hook her own bra. She doesn't even say, okay, my shoulder hurts, right? She just talks about a small, tiny, humiliating story. And then afterwards she says, okay, I was just a body that had betrayed me, right? So we basically start with a symptom, with one small problem. We then dive deeper into that moment of why it's really emotional for her. And then we basically tie this symptom to the identity, right? And this is very, very strong. So this is basically her identity breaking. And that's also how we tie something that's maybe kind of a small moment to something really big, right? So we agitate the pain. You've probably heard PAS, right? Problem, agitation, solution framework in terms of writing copy. And that's basically it, right? So you want to have something that happens, you want to have a problem, you want to have a pain point, and then you want to make it really, really big. So that even if it seems small for the reader right now, you make it feel like something really big. Because if you think back to the pain threshold, that's what you need to do, right? You need to make the problem and the pain really, really big. So that's basically how we start into the advertorial with the personal story. Section number 2 is then the current situation with emotional pain, right? So with the hook and the intro, we got the first 30 seconds, right? So this next section has to then turn that into a full commitment to the page, right? So what we want to do here is we want to resonate with the reader, right? So you want to mirror the reader's life back at them with more precision and with more detail that they could describe it themselves. So you basically want to get them to think, okay, this really is me, right? And that's what you need to have that great customer avatar understanding for. Because once the reader thinks that, they start evaluating the page and start reading it like a letter that's written specifically to them. And that's also when you get to copywriting that works really, really well, right? People do not buy something when they understand the product. They buy something when they feel understood. So you want to give them this specific feeling. So before the page even explains anything, it proves that you know exactly what living with the problem is. You understand the details in the day-to-day life and you can articulate it better than they can, right? So every detail that you can give to the reader makes them realize that you understand them. So structurally, this section walks the pain from something that's very, very small to something that takes over the reader's life, right? In slow and concrete steps. So you're never basically describing a symptom, you're describing a life shrinking. And the shrinking life, right, is something that people want to pay to reverse. Also, one specific thing here is the specificity in the copy, right? So don't just completely copy and paste this advertorial for your product now, it's just not going to work. You can obviously copy and paste the ideas and the sections, but then you still have to change the pain points and everything. So that's why customer research is so important. So here the copy basically is, at 58, I'd been dealing with shoulder aches for about 2 years. Nothing major at first, just a familiar twinge after long day at work. The kind of thing you pop an advert for and forget about, but it didn't stay that way. The pain crept up on me like a thief in the night, stealing little pieces of my life, one by one. So here, just super quickly, right? we want to enter the reader's current state, and then this metaphor is very, very strong, right? Like a thief in the night stealing little pieces of my life one by one. The thief metaphor turns the condition into an enemy, right? So we can have a common enemy that we go again, right? So you've probably heard this too, common enemy. That's something that we love to use in marketing just because it gets people to take an action. And this metaphor takes the pain into something that actively takes things away from her. So going on with the copy, first it was golf. I had to quit because swinging a club felt like someone was driving a hot knife into my shoulder blade. Then it was reaching for things. The coffee mug on the top shelf became an enemy. I started moving everything down to eye level, like I was rearranging my whole life around this invisible prison. Right, so here we just basically name drop a couple more problems, and then, so here we, for example, 1 problem, 2 problems, 3 problems, and then how she tries to live with it, right? So we basically go from the hobby, right, golf, to everyday objects, which is reaching for things in her private life, and how this problem, this pain point with her shoulder, takes over her normal life piece by piece. Then it was sleep. The pain started waking me up at 2 a.m. I'd roll onto my left side and scream, not exaggerating. My husband Mark started sleeping in the guest room because I kept jolting awake, moaning like a wounded animal. Eventually I gave up on our bed entirely, moved to the living room recliner. That became my bed for the next 8 months. So 8 months of waking up with stiff neck on top of the shoulder pain. 8 months of my husband sleeping alone. 8 months of feeling like a guest in my own home. Right? So here basically the problem then reaches her private life, the marriage, sleep, intimacy, and everything, right? So here again, why do we write 2 a.m.? Why do we say left side? Why do we say 8 months or the recliner? You want to make it as detailed as possible because then they can really resonate with the story. The copy then goes on with, at that moment with the bra, there was rock bottom. I was staying in my closet, arms twisted behind my back, tears streaming down my face, trying to do something I'd done thousands of times without thinking, and I couldn't do it. My husband had to help me, right? My husband had to took my bra like I was a child. I sat on the edge of the bed afterward and just sobbed. Not from the pain, from the humiliation. From the realization that this thing had taken everything from me. My independence, my sleep, my hobbies, my intimacy with my husband, my identity. I didn't know who I was anymore, and I had no idea that in just 3 weeks, everything was about to change, right? So this is basically the copy for the second section. And as you can see, at the end, we made it very, very dramatic, right? So basically, we went from surface level problems to this taking over her hobbies, day-to-day objects, to her private life, and then also her identity, right? So that's how you take something from like a very small problem or pain and blow it up amazingly big, right? So this is what this section number 2 is doing. Setting the stage, diving deep into the pain, really getting them huge emotional pain. And then also at the end, we have an open loop, right? So in just 3 weeks, everything was about to change. And now we basically resonated with them. We made them feel understood. And now we tell them, hey, listen, there's a solution on the market that we are about to reveal to you. So after setting the stage with section 2 and section 3, we then tell them why nothing else worked, right? So every reader who makes it this far silently thinks, okay, well, I've tried so many things before. Why would this be any different, right? So most pages, they just ignore that and they just basically go straight into the mechanism and propose a solution, right? But we really want to beat this objection first to tell them, well, here's why nothing else worked and here's why then afterwards this is the only thing that's going to work. So this is super important, and you're also going to see that every section is carefully constructed and follows a very, very strong path, right? Just like a straight line selling it to them. And this is super important because we basically take all of their objections away before pitching the product. So this section has a couple of different things it needs to achieve. So number 1 is every single alternative, we basically want to name it and we want to burn it down, right? So that at the end of this, it's only our solution that's left. Because basically, whatever the reader is then doing afterwards, if they go to Google or whatever, we tell them, hey, listen, it's just not going to work. The second thing is we also want to tell them, well, we not only want to do, hey, all of this is shit. We also want to say, but also not doing anything is bad, right? So if you don't do anything, all of the pains that we just talked about are going to stay with you. And then basically number 3, right, which is a more of a subtle one, is that us writing this story from a point of view is that basically the narrator says, hey, I've wasted years of my life, I've wasted thousands of dollars, I don't want you to do the same thing, right? Which is why I have the right to recommend you something, and the reader trusts that, right? Because the reader can resonate with that and say, okay, well, she spent so much money, so much of her time on this, I can just trust what she says, right? So this is basically what this section is doing. Now, the copy is, I tried everything and I mean everything. And then we have an image here of all of the different solutions. Before I tell you what finally worked, you need to understand what didn't, because I'm guessing you've been down the same road that I have. And I want you to know I get it, I've been there. So super quickly, just setting the stage for dissecting all of the other solutions in the market. Heating pads, I bought 3 different brands. They get lukewarm after 20 minutes and die. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. with a cold pad stuck to my back. Useless. Physical therapy, 14 weeks, twice a week, $200 per session, blah, blah, blah. Right? So you can see we just take another solution on the market. We then tell them why it's bad. Another solution on the market, we tell them why it's bad. Another solution on the market, we tell them why it's bad. Another solution on the market, right? We tell them why it's bad. And then we just say nothing worked. Not really, not permanently, maybe a few hours here and there, enough to tease me, but nothing really sticked. So again, with these things, you can already see that, again, we just have to have a crystal clear understanding of our customer avatar to be able to be this precise. We even have to understand what are the other solutions that they are thinking about right now, right? Whether you're selling a supplement, beauty product, pain relief product, whatever it is, you need to understand what are the other solutions that your customer is potentially looking at, so you can then take it away. Then basically and then my doctor said the words I've been reading, Linda, I think it's time we talk about surgery. That's made me cry. That we then have an image of her, right, looking really, really bad and emotional in the doctor's office. He referred me to an orthopedic surgeon, a guy with fancy diplomas on the wall and a long waiting list. I sat in his office, x-rays and MRIs lit up on the screen as he explained my options. And then we basically dive into the details of, well, this is so expensive, it takes very long, it's very, very bad solution. And then he said something that stopped me cold. I have to be honest with you, Linda, for patients for your age, these surgeries only work about half the time. So basically what we do here is we tell them, well, also surgery is not an option. So we basically take the last option away from them, which is basically all of this stuff here. Right, so I cried there in this office, not the dignified blah blah crying, the ugly cry. I want you to read that again. You have 50% chance, which is basically a coin flip. You have to pay $35,000 in 6 months of your life. And this is basically where we take the last option away. He handed me a tissue and scheduled a follow-up when I was ready. That's when I realized the system isn't designed to heal you, it's designed to process you. And this is where we then basically go against the health system. And this is where we again install the enemy, right, with the thief in the night. Then into section 4, we dive into the root cause, right? So what we've done so far is we grabbed the attention, we set the stage, we resonated with them with their pain points, we basically talked about why none of the other solutions work. And then section 4, we then dive into what is actually the root cause of the problem and the pain point that they experience, right? So this is the section where cold traffic actually gets sold. And it's also the section that most people just skip. So remember, the person that are reading, they just know that they have the shoulder pain, but they, for example, don't know why they're experiencing it, right? So they have a problem and they don't understand why they have it. And if we give them the explanation, we then own the frame for the solution, right? So the brand that explains the problem in the best way is believed to have the best solution, even before the solution is mentioned, just because, again, they feel understood, right? So the differentiation here is we want to name the root cause that your competitors are not talking about. Because if your reader accepts this new root cause, every competitor becomes irrelevant by definition because they're all solving the wrong problem. So you're not fighting for the same solution, you're changing which solutions exist because you frame a completely different problem. So that's basically the whole idea of this section, right? So I want you to pay attention how we deliver this section now, right? When I'm breaking down the copy. So the copy is, my physical therapist said something that changed everything. And then we have the image of her with the physical therapist. I went back to my PT one more time, not because I thought I would help, but because I needed to vent. Blaine had been working on my shoulder some months. He knew my case. He'd see me cry. He'd see me frustrated. He'd see me at my loss. So when I told him about the surgery recommendation, he got quiet, really quiet. Then he closed the door to the treatment room, which he never did, and said, Linda, can I tell you something off the record? I nodded. problem with your shoulder isn't that it's broken, it's that it's starving. I must have looked confused because he put up a diagram on his tablet. And this is basically where we then tie back into the ad and everything in the beginning, right? So if you remember back thinking about the ad where we basically set the stage with my physical therapist told me something off the record, right? So that's what they have in the back of their mind. And that's what we then take back here in section 4, right? The real reason your shoulder won't heal. Blaine explained it to me like this. After 40, blood flow to your shoulder decreases by 3% every year, right? So he's then basically explaining the real root cause. So here the root cause is basically that the blood flow to the shoulder decreases, right? So she then has this epiphany of, well, I need to solve blood flow, right? This is the root cause of why she has all of the pain and all of the struggles. So he then goes on to explain why that happens, how it happens, why that appears, right? And again, also then tying it to why nothing else works, right? So this is a very, very interesting section, right? So you really want to figure out how can you explain it to them. Same thing, for example, let's just say you sell a weight loss supplement, and then you basically tell them, well, listen, it's not what you think it is. It has nothing to do with how many calories you eat or how much about your genetics or how much you go to the gym or whatever. It's something completely new. And then the root cause may be that their mitochondria are not dissecting ATP in the best format, right? So this is just a quick excursus to biology, where basically in the cells there are small things that basically break down fat cells and carbohydrates, right? So you can then basically give a completely new root cause and then say, well, listen, and that's why we've built a product that really helps you accelerate your cells naturally splitting fat and working with carbohydrates to give you energy. And that's how you're just going to have a way better metabolism, and that's how you're going to lose weight, right? So just wanted to take this example and take it to another product. So here we just tell them, well, it's the blood flow. He then explains it to her and then also explains why none of the other solutions work, right? And then it really has this aha moment in the reader's mind, because now they think, well, that's the problem. Blood flow is the problem. And that's why all of the solutions didn't work. And that's why they have this epiphany, right? So that's the main thing that section 4 achieves. It basically gives them the root cause before we then in section 5 reveal our unique mechanism. So the reader now believes in a new root cause, right? Which means they hold a lock and now they're looking for the key. So this section presents the mechanism as the key that they're looking for, right? So the mechanism, meaning your product, has to solve exactly the root cause that you just told them. If the mechanism doesn't map one-to-one to the root cause, the page collapses, right? And the reader feels like this is a scam. So the credibility in this section comes from one source: specificity, as I was talking about earlier before. The mechanism gets a name and every component gets a spec, an exact number, for example. So the specs read like engineering, right? So you just want to give it completely different credibility. The most commercially important belief in this section is that only this combination works, right? So whenever you build your mechanism, you want to look for your version of that line, right? The reason why partial solution and cheap substitutes cannot deliver the result. We've already broken down why all of the other solutions don't work, but now we need to set the stage in a very, very strong way, right? So let's get into it. The science is clear, even if the doctor never mentioned it. I went home that night and started researching. I had to see it for myself. What I found shocked me, right? So basically she dives into this now with the blood flow. She then goes into the different studies, right? She finds out a lot of interesting stuff around the root cause and the blood flow, and why you should believe that. Right, so she then basically went back to her PT and said, okay, what's the answer? I asked him, how do you increase blood flow? And then he said, that's where it gets interesting. The triple therapy method, right? So this is basically the mechanism, the triple therapy method. Blaine told me about something he'd been quietly recommended to worst case patients like me who tried everything and were facing surgery. A home device that combines 3 therapies at once, which is why it's called the triple therapy method. So here, right, we then basically put the features of your offer and then tell the reader why the features of your offer are solving specifically the problems that they have and the root cause of the problem, right? So for example, the heat, right? So it helps open the blood vessels, the rhythmic compression, right? So it forces blood through the tissue, the vibration, so that triggers cellular regeneration, right? So he basically then says, here's the key, heat alone doesn't work, massage alone doesn't work, compression doesn't work, but when you get everything together, you get a 340% increase in blood flow. 340%. That's what your shoulder needs, he said. It needs to be fed, and this is the only thing that I found that actually does it. So also what you can see here is that we basically have 3 different protagonists, right, in this story. We have the bad doctor, we have the good physician, right? And then we have the poor woman, Linda. And then Linda is basically acting like the voice in the mind of the reader, where she is somewhat of a critic, she has the problem herself, the doctor is really bad to her physician isn't very nice to her, she then goes home to understand it herself, she reads studies herself, yada yada yada, and then she has the whole epiphany, right? He told me the device was called Rejuvacare treatment method shoulder massage, and that I should try it for 2 weeks before getting good surgery. What do you have to lose, he said, 12 minutes a day, that's it. So that's basically section 5, right? Where you want to introduce a new mechanism, give it a name, explain why it works, explain why it's different, and then also present the product to the person. Section number 6 is then the proof story, right? So everything up to here is basically you claiming that you understand everything, right? So now the question for the reader is not anymore, does it work? Because they somewhat believe that it works. The last question that they have, okay, does this work for someone like me? Because everybody thinks they're a special snowflake, right? So we really need to build a couple of stories in here. And best case scenario is that you have a couple of different personas and customer avatars that you can introduce in here, where you demonstrate the product and where you just deliver a lot of proof, right? So here, what happened over the next 14 days, I ordered the product. At this point, I'd spent over $5,000 in treatment and it would work. What was one more thing, right? It arrived 3 days later. I used it the same evening. Here's what happened. Day 1, day 3, day 4, day 7, day 9, day 14. So basically what she's doing here, she explains how she's using the product every single day and how she experiences the benefits from the product. And she also future paces the reader on, you buy this product and this is exactly what's going to achieve. So this future pacing psychology here is very, very strong, right? Because it tells the reader where next step you're going to buy the product, it's going to arrive at your doorstep. This is what you're going to see at day 1, day 3, day 4, 7, 9, and 14, right? So this is very, very strong. Then afterwards she says, I canceled this surgery in the next morning. That was 4 months ago. I've been sleeping on my slide ever since, playing golf again, gardening, hugging my grandkids. I got my life back. If your shoulder's been stealing your sleep, your hobbies, your sanity, you don't have to keep suffering. Click here to get yours back now, right? So the call to action is not buy the product. The call to action is click here to get your life back. And that is basically section 6. Section 7 is then objection handling, right? So basically here we still obviously have a lot of skeptic people. So they want to believe the result, they want to believe the mechanism, but for people that haven't clicked yet, they have some specific objections, right? Everyone has different objections, so this section is targeting the main objections and breaks them down individually, right? So first we like to start with testimonials, and then every testimonial basically covers a certain objection, right? The rule you take is simple. You want to understand the 5 biggest objections that keeps people from buying, and then you want to pick one, and then you want to write a testimonial for them, right? So let's get into it. I'm not the only one. Since sharing my story, I've heard from dozens of people with similar experiences. And then what you can see here, again, I don't have to read all of this for you, but we just have different customer avatars. We have one woman, she has pain, she cannot garden anymore, right? We have another person who loved golfing, he couldn't golf anymore. We have another person, she couldn't sleep anymore, now she's happily cooking again. We've had another person who couldn't work anymore, right? Another person with this problem, another person with this. So as you can see, we basically have 4 or 5 different customer avatars here with one specific problem, one specific objection, and then we basically solve that objection with the testimony of the customer. So it's very subtle, but very, very strong. And that's what this section is doing. And then at the end, it's basically, you might be wondering, if this works so well, why hasn't my doctor told me about it? Because your doctor has 12 minutes with you. They were trained in surgery, not in rehabilitation technology. Because the medical system rewards interventions, not prevention. I'm not saying doctors are bad, mine was wonderful, but the system they work in isn't designed to find simple solutions, right? So here we then go back to the common enemy, which is the health system. Then we basically have frequently asked questions, right? So is this a whatever, right? So this is objection number 1, solve the objection. This is objection number 2, right? Solve the objection. This is another objection, right? So we basically, in here, we have all of these testimonials and all of the FAQ to solve all of the objections. And then also, why is this working when everything else failed, right? So basically we then say, hey, why is this working? And why is it so cheap? So she goes back to her therapist, and then he's saying, yeah, well, listen, do you think our common enemy wants you to know that there's a $59 device that works that's better than a $35,000 surgery? No, they wouldn't make money, right? So here we basically have the closing paragraph of why this is different, why it's so cheap, and why nobody told them about it before. So this section is very, very strong if you do it the right way, right? Because here you then handle all of the open objections. Section number 8 is then price reveal and scarcity, right? So here basically you want to drop the price. Again, price is just based on the perceived value. So the reader doesn't even know if it's like very expensive or very cheap, right? So they always reference it to another price point. Right, so if you are a strong marketer, you control the environment of how they perceive the price, right? So this is basically why there are so many value stacks of like, this is inside, and that's the value, but now you get it for this price, right? So by the time the real price shows up, the reader has mentally spent a fortune on alternatives the page had already killed, right? And then we have the scarcity too. So this is a very interesting one because it's framed as, here's what I tell you if you were my sister. If you're dealing with shoulder pain, right? So basically here you can see that now at the end, she's basically making a heartfelt recommendation to the reader. Here's what I've told you from my sister. If you're dealing with this pain, should you buy the product? Well, yes, here's how I'm using it, right? So here she just breaks down why she really recommends the product. And then again, so this is the first part, right? So she talks about a real recommendation. The second part is scarcity, right? So I wish it was easy to get it. Well, it's not. It has so many medical grade components, but it's out of stock a lot of time, right? They've sold it 3 times this year. A lot of people are waiting, right? But through this page, you can check if there's still units available. And then we reveal the price, right? Let's talk about what it's worth. And then you can see 2,800, 1,000, 35,500, and this one is only $59, right? So spent over $5,000. This didn't work, right? So she just breaks down all of the price point. Then she says suggested retail is $159, and that's really fair, right? Because it's way cheaper than 35,000. But here, instead of $159, you can get it for $59, which is over 50% off. Right? So check if it's still in stock. Now what you can see here with this last section, we have 3 things happening. Number 1, we have a very strong recommendation. Number 2, we have scarcity. And then number 3, we have the price anchoring against all of these high prices, making it seem like a very, very low price. Then the last 2 sections are then basically the guarantee and then the comment section, right? So at this stage, so far down on the advertorial, right? Like we went through all of this already. We are here right now. At this stage, what people didn't click yet, right? So we just have the last couple of sections. Basically, at the end, we just have this section, right? Nothing to lose guarantee. So we just have the breakdown of the guarantee, future pacing, and the close. Right? So what we want to do here is we want to kill the last objections. We want to make it so easy to buy the product and just push them over the edge, right? So the best thing is just giving them an easy guarantee. So you can say, okay, 90-day nothing to lose guarantee, use it. If you don't like it, you can just return it. And that's how confident I am, right? So basically right now you have two options. Path number one, you just go away from this page, you keep experiencing the pain points. Option number two, you can just buy it now, try it risk-free. It's going to help you. If you don't like it, you can just get it back, right? And that's basically how they close the page here at the bottom, right? Then basically, very interesting, the last section is then section number 10, which is just the comment section. So here you can see that we then use like a very, very natural looking comment section to solve the last questions that they have, right? Has anyone tried this? This is the best thing ever, right? I bought mine and now they are off, right? 60%, that's not fair, which also tells them where they should buy it now. How long does the shipping take? Hey, received it after a week. Bought this for my wife, has been amazing, right? So at the end, you just want to have a comment section so that you can keep the readers on the page. And basically, as you can see here, the smartest comments in the sections, like these ones, are usually a complaint, right? So something like, hey, this is better than other things, right? Well, I bought mine, but now they're discounted. Well, how long are they discounted, right? I just ordered mine, I cannot wait. I really want to test it out. Does anyone know how long it takes? I want to buy one for my dad, right? So this is just a lot of social proof for the reader, right? And this is basically how we end the advertorial, right? Again, this is the whole page and just crushing on cold traffic. So this is the complete breakdown. I will link the document down below this video. If you want to dive deeper into more topics around how you can scale your e-commerce brand way faster, way more profitable, I have over 100 videos on my YouTube channel talking about everything from advertorials to landing pages, how to craft offers, how to do conversion optimization, A/B testing, copywriting, right? And dozens of case studies of how we've helped brands double or triple their revenue within 90 days of working together, right? So just check out my YouTube channel if you want to dive deeper into these topics. If you want to understand how to do it for your brand and you just want help from somebody who's done this dozens of times and basically sold over hundreds of millions of dollars of products through advertorial funnels like the one that I've just broken down right now, then just click on the link that you find at the top and at the bottom of the document, right? Get on a call with me and my team so we can talk, check your brand, check your KPIs, check your current funnel and niche. And if we see a strong fit of working together, then we're just going to make you an offer and then we can work together. So let me know what you thought about this video in the comment section down below, and then I will see you in one of the next videos.